like to call to order the June 23rd, 2022 Board of Adjustment meeting. Can I get a roll call, please, Brandy?
Yes. Dolly?
Here.
Ford?
Here.
Brink?
Here.
Oletsky?
Present.
Spire?
Here.
Oh, and we got Kays, if he... Okay, he's
Todd
here.
Kays is here as well.
And then now Hanson, Culhane, Dargis Johnson, and I think that's everyone. Yeah,
Yep.
they're absent. We have a quorum. I just wanted to make sure that I was accounting for everyone, which I'm.
No, sounds good. I appreciate that. So, moving on the agenda, third item is the approval of the minutes from the June 9th meeting. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
I'll make that motion. Ford seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Ford,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Kays,
Abstain.
Brink,
Yes.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Spire.
Yes.
Motion carries. Fourth item on the agenda is our regular agenda. It's a board consideration of a conditional use of a bar or tavern in the C3 Highway Commercial District located on Jensen Avenue. Brandy, will you take over for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So the owner and applicant is Rod Lindner, is the owner of the property, and then Donna Marchand, who is the business owner, is the applicant. And so this is a conditional use request for a bar or tavern located at 806 Jensen Avenue. And what the primary business is a boutique, and she would like to be able to have approximately 15 seats for coffee and wine, beer, whatnot. She did get approved for the malt beverage license and wine license at the council on the Tuesday meeting, contingent that the conditional use is approved. So it's not, the bar tavern is really accessory to the primary use of the retail establishment. And I think that that would be a good condition to make if approved, just so that it is looked at for the full intention. So that say if somebody else came in and if it were a actual full blown, the primary use was a bar tavern, we might look at it differently. And I have the parking information included on this staff report as well. They will have appropriate parking that they would be required to have if it were a bar tavern or a retail establishment. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you. First question I always like to ask is, was the neighbors notified or did we hear back from any of them?
Yes, so I sent letters out to the neighbors. I did hear back from one adjacent property owner who just expressed that they would have concern if it were going to be a bar tavern open till 2 a.m.
Okay.
She was interested in what the hours of the business would be,
Okay.
which I did not know. And I don't know if the applicant, I don't think is, oh, she is here. Okay. So she would be able to answer that.
Sure. I will open up the public hearing. If you do want to step up to the microphone and state your name for the record and kind of let us know your proposal.
This is Ford. Can I ask a question first?
Yeah, go ahead, Diana.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Where was the conditional use sign posted on the property?
So the applicant is here. It should have been, there's like the yellow sign. Was that posted on the property?
I drove by several times and I never could locate it. That's why I wondered where it was.
So
This is Donna Marchand.
Go ahead, Donna.
So we did post the sign, and I believe it may have blown away on the night of that windstorm.
Okay. Where did you post it
Well,
at?
it wasn't, yeah.
It was posted in the boulevard.
Well, there was no sign posted yesterday or today. I will only say, it was supposed to be posted 5 days before this hearing. And so for the last 2 days at least, there has been no sign posted.
That's what I'm wondering, if it must have blown away, because, it was there, yeah.
Brandy? Currently, the business is not being used as a boutique. They haven't taken occupancy of the building.
I believe they have.
Okay.
We have.
And-
we have.
And the ordinance stipulates that it's the applicant's responsible for placing it, or is it the city staff is responsible?
The applicant.
What, do we have any policy in place for, once they have placed it in the boulevard, that of a weather event or something, is it, whose responsibility is to replace that sign? Do we have anything?
That is it's not, we don't have that spelled out. And I would think that that's kind of a unique situation where, because we would go, and for the code enforcement officer actually used to go and then take pictures to verify that the sign was posted. And now that that has switched to the PD, we need to come up with a better system with that. But, or look at, how to add that system in. So if we would have had, if we would have taken a picture, seen that the sign was there, and if it were to be removed, I mean, it would be really hard to police that.
I guess in the past, if the intent is that they are to place the sign, they've placed the sign. I think that's where we probably do need some sort of a ruling on if it was intentionally removed, that's one thing.
Right.
If it was blown back down, is it the applicant's responsibility to come and get it? Or is it the city's responsibility that it was posted 5 days before, and does the city check the day of the meeting that it was still up? I mean, that seems like an administrative thing that we need to work out.
Right, and the idea behind these sign postings was we did not want it to become another administration for the staff, which is why we had the applicant post it. If anything, it was for more public awareness and transparency, so that somebody driving by that might not be within 250 feet of the property would be able to see the sign, but they weren't receiving a letter if they felt like they were affected by what was being asked for.
That's how I remember it too when we added that, because, we would often come to these meetings and people that are in the neighborhood but not immediate landowners that don't get a letter say, hey, I never heard about this, so we asked to put it out. But, if it's the weather or if it's a neighbor kid riding his bike, thought he was funny and he took it, I mean, I don't know if I personally feel like I could hold the landowner accountable for that. If it was.
And the reason I look at it too, there are times where I might not own the property or have a building constructed. I placed a sign 5 days before, and I might be out of town for a week or prior to that meeting, and if it goes away, as long as I show that I posted, take a picture, it's a date stamped, I think that's meeting the intent.
Right. The idea would be that it would be posted the entire time, but obviously there are scenarios like the recent windstorm where it was good intention that it would have been posted the entire time.
I also see if there's a neighbor in the neighborhood that doesn't want to see it, and they say, well, if it wasn't there for 5 days in a row, I just take it the day before, I'm going to have to start the process all over. I don't think that's the intent either.
Yeah.
No, the intent was to try to help spread awareness. I mean, we do post it on our website. We post the agenda outside the city hall doors, and we send adjacent landowner notices. And this was just to try to notify additional people if possible. It's outside the requirement of the minimum
This is
also
a very good discussion. I mean, do we need to make some sort of a finding that was the intent was met?
Well, before we do that question, real quick, just were all the adjacent properties notified?
Yes, the letters were sent.
So the intent of the code was met then?
Yes. And I wanted to add to that, it was also published in the paper at least 10 days in advance. So that is meeting state statute and ordinance. The sign posting actually is not a required, it's not a state statute.
Requirement, yeah.
But if you do decide to have a sign posting, it has to meet the size requirement.
And our ordinance only stipulates that it has to be posted 5 days prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that it has to be posted every day, 5 days prior to the meeting.
Well, and that's where it's like getting very technical with it. We haven't had an issue with it. People have been great about coming and picking up their signs and posting them. And then we just need to actually pick back up on the follow-up, but for the most part, it has not been an issue.
I do think
So
we need.
this
I'm
is
sorry.
Ford again. I will say all of these are excellent comments, and certainly things happen. I guess when I noticed that the business was ongoing and actually open, so the owner was coming and going, it would have been easy to note that the required sign was missing from your boulevard. That's my point. You put a sign out, it's a bright color, all of a sudden it's gone, you're in and out several times a day. I'm troubled by that. Is Matt there by any chance?
He is not
not.
here.
Okay. I do know that we had another instance where the sign wasn't posted. And we delayed action on the request until the sign had been appropriately posted. So that would be the history of how we have handled that in the past.
What?
I would tend to agree that there is, the code is not specific and that it's continuous 5 days. It just says specifically the sign will be posted 5 days in advance. And it doesn't say anything further about continuously visible.
I do think it's probably imperative that we have some sort of a policy in place as far as the finding that that requirement of the ordinance has been met. And whether we start today with that or we push it down the road, I do think we do need to talk about that, because if there's any challenge to the permit that's been granted, it's going to be challenged primarily on a procedural basis as opposed to the actual use request. And so we need to be confident that we think that the intent of the ordinance was held up throughout the process and the decision making.
I'd agree with you, Todd, and like I said earlier, I think the intent when we did create or add that to the ordinance, because when I sat over in Brandy's chair, that was not a requirement, but we did add it because we wanted just more people to know about the meeting, and that we were just trying to help notify, not like was mentioned, it's not state required, it's not a state statute, it was just an additional thing to help make sure the neighborhood knew. And I don't think that, like you mentioned, that someone could just come and take the sign, or the wind could take the sign, and then we say, oh, you gotta start over, it wasn't there, because then someone could, filibuster someone's permit by just always taking signs, which doesn't sound like that was the case here, but I don't want that to be how this ends
But
up
isn't
going.
the intent that for 5 days it's posted? Not just put it up, take a picture, take it down, it's posted.
Well, of course, it's
know.
intended that it stays up, but
Yeah.
in the instance that it doesn't stay up for weather
Yeah.
or neighborhood kid or whatever it is, I don't think that that's reason in my mind to.
No, I don't think we should either, but it's kind of like what Diana said, is that she's in business, she goes there every day.
And in this situation, I mean, I would tend to agree that there's a probability that, or possibility that they could come and got another one. I'm just saying, say she was not open, and maybe she wasn't told that, one, and two, let's say she just had the business rented but hadn't opened yet, and she planted the sign and she moved back to Sioux Falls until, how do you know?
I think that, I have the ordinance pulled up here, and the fact that the city, we need to get a better system as well, where say that we were checking daily if somebody was driving by and making sure. I think that we need to do a better job enforcing it, And then also making the applicants more aware. I mean, we can add that to the application, but I mean, just for the amount of, permits and just business that we're processing, I don't think that this is a high priority of I think that we should hold the applicants accountable, and we should have a better system in place for making sure that it is being posted. But in this scenario, it has not been, and I'm saying that we can improve that. But I just think I have a hard time saying that we hold the applicant responsible for this.
I agree with you 100%.
And I don't think this isn't, it's not indicative, I'm not making an assumption that staff has done anything wrong. I think it's something that's popped up that we've never had. And so I agree, I think in this situation, if we get to the point of making a motion, the motion should include the finding that it's been met. And then we figure it out internally how to make it better moving forward.
So could we just ask for, factually, when was the sign posted?
The applicant will have to, Donna, if you can answer that. It was,
I didn't understand the question, but I'm wondering if you had asked when the sign was posted. And Brandy, it was the day that I picked it up from your office that you had called me. And I had noticed only on, I think it was yesterday morning, that the sign wasn't there. And honestly, it's just in the boulevard. I don't really pay attention to it. It wasn't anything where I was worried about it not being posted and not being visible.
What day was that?
that would have been last, I want to say last Wednesday,
If it was last
Thursday.
week, it'd be 5 days regardless.
So it would have
Yes,
been
and I
5
would-
days of posting prior to the hearing.
Yes.
Exceeding that, it would have been. in
Yes,
excess of
and
5 days.
actually, I always, so on OpenGov, we have our applications where I corresponded with the applicant, said that the sign was ready to be picked up. Actually, there's a portion on the application where they have to acknowledge that they have to come pick up a sign and post it, where I can make that clearer so that that's consistently there. But I also do have them come, I put on the sign that it should be posted by this date, and I put a couple days and give them a little cushion so that it is posted. So usually they're posted a week in advance.
Chair, may I make a comment? So, if I was an adjacent landowner and I didn't like what was gonna go on there, I could go out in the middle of the night and take the sign down, correct?
Exactly, and that's something that I don't want to be allowed as a filibuster to make.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to get at, so thank you.
Yeah. And that's where it makes it really hard to administer. All that is required by state statute is that the landowner, there has to be adjacent landowner letters. We extend it to 250 feet. And then that there be a public notice published 10 days in advance of the meeting. So we're meeting the state statute. This was our own decision to have more public transparency and notice.
I think the transparency is good, but again, Watertown's probably one of the 8 or 10 communities that actually does the sign thing, because the sign is the most problematic component, and depending on how you structure that sign requirement, it's the most fraught of being challenged in the event of a decision that somebody doesn't like.
Yeah, and that staff was hesitant of that when we
So
added it.
I do think we should add that to the, a plan commission item at a later date, but as far as this item goes, I know the applicant is here online. Would you mind, Donna, kind of explaining, to us what your proposal is, hours of operation, what it all entails?
Sure. So the main part of the business is a boutique. So I have a little coffee area in here that has seating for about 13 to 15. And we are just going to serve wine as an addition to the shopping. We are open Tuesday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2.
Will you repeat those times for me?
Sure. Tuesday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Those are our boutique hours. We may do like a Wednesday night, ladies' night, something like that, and be open till 8 or 9, but nothing beyond that. Like, we aren't interested in running a bar. It's simply an addition to the boutique and coffee shop.
So if we, and I'm just thinking out loud, not, not speaking for the whole board, but if we were to put a condition on there that, no wine sales would happen after 10 p.m. or something along those lines, would that be agreeable to you?
I mean, in all honesty, it probably won't happen after 10 p.m., but I mean, do you issue restrictions like that with wine licenses? Like, I don't want to box myself in case something would change,
Right.
but at this time, I don't have an intent to do it past 10 p.m.
Sure. Well, when it comes to conditional uses, we do have the ability to put on conditions, such as hours of operation. And, so that's why we do try to see what the intent is and see, that that's being followed. So it is a possibility that something like that, could be put on.
Brandy, may I ask a question, Mr. Chair? Brandy, a bar tavern is a conditional use in the C3 zone, and that's the only reason that we're seeing this.
Yes.
And so if this wasn't a boutique and I wanted to go approach Rod and Sally Lindner and say, I want to rent out the east half of that building and open up a casino, it'd come before this board as a conditional use, and we really don't have a lot of requirements that would restrict that bar from opening up, other than general compatibility. And if we see bars in the C3 zone throughout that area, and it's not within a proximity of a church or a school or a park or something like that, there would be really no reason to deny that permit for a bar and tavern.
Well,
under normal circumstances.
Yes, and that's the thing. So this is Zone C3 Highway Commercial. I do believe that the general compatibility component does give the board the latitude to look at, they might look at the application differently if it were the primary use. But the fact that this is accessory, and that's where I would recommend that the board would make a condition that the bar tavern is accessory to the primary use of the retail establishment. If that were to change and somebody wanted to come in and open just a bar tavern, that they would need to reapply, because then I think you would look at it differently. And I think too, and that's where the adjacent landowners, looking at what is being applied for, they might be okay with it if it's a bar within a boutique, so that they're not having people there till 2 a.m. and potentially wandering onto properties and whatnot. That happens. In those situations can happen. But so that would be my recommendation, is that you guys would make a condition that it be accessory to the primary use of the retail establishment.
Are there any residential uses in proximity of this area?
Nope. There is industrial to the south and then commercial to the north. And actually, if I can hold on this discussion, I want to let this lady give her testimony, because she actually she'll have to be leaving here soon.
Oh, sorry.
So I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to give her the opportunity.
Thank you. Rick and Wendy Schultz, representing Schultz Electric. Our little building is to the south, and we think the applicant's idea sounds really fun, but we would just ask the board that they would reevaluate if the boutique should close, because we would not be thrilled with a full bar next to our building. That's the only reason we're here. We think what she's asking for sounds like a good idea, but if it were to turn into a bar or tavern, we would have a different thought on that.
Brandy, when the city council issued the bar or the wine and beer license, did they put any stipulations or conditions on that it had to be connected as an accessory or ancillary use to the boutique?
No.
They basically said, here's your beer and wine license, and it's good for a year.
Yep, and then having it be conditional that the Board of Adjustment, because this is the board that acts on if it's appropriate or not.
Enough said?
Can I, Mr. Chair, this is Ford. Can I ask another question?
Go ahead, Diana.
So this accessory use is interesting, and the primary use of being a boutique. So how exactly, with the same owner, do we ascertain when the primary use is no longer a boutique, but is now selling wine and beer? Is there a percentage of income? Is it, I mean, how do we know when that line is crossed from primary
So, Mr. Chair,
to,
yeah, that's my question exactly, at least from an insurance perspective. When it exceeds 25% threshold of the business revenue, then it enters in a different category for insurance purposes. We can no longer insure it, at least through our company, as such. So that would be a metric I'd be interested to know, is how do you assess the business model, what percentage of its revenue income's coming from the boutique versus from the sale of, liquor?
I know under statute, we have specific guidelines when it comes to restaurants and special alcohol
That
license,
license.
which that is not, it's an apples and oranges here. And that's where I'm struggling with this concept of saying it's accessory, we should only allow it. My personal feeling is it's a commercial area, it's a use that's allowed in the C3 zone. There are no adjoining land uses in the area that would normally you take into consideration when you are, when we just did the last one a month ago on Main Street on Kemp, as far as churches and parks and schools and those types of things. So
Yeah.
I have no problem saying whether it's, accessory to, or if it's a principal or primary, it's a bar. You can walk within a mile of there and you're gonna find a half a dozen other bar taverns in that area, or casinos, or what have you. So to me, I think the alcohol usage is a non-issue.
isn't it across the street from the Women's Resource Center?
There's a church too.
Would you please come to the mic and state your name for the record?
There's a
Just
church?
People online can't hear you talk if you don't.
Rick Schultz, we own the land to the south, but there is a church right to the east of it, the Bridge Church,
Where is that located, Brandy, on there?
just probably 30 feet.
That's the
from
church
it.
right there? Oh, okay, I wasn't
But
aware of that.
my wife's been talking to them, and for the intended use, what we've been hearing, they don't have a problem with it.
And they would have received a letter as well,
They did.
except that
How was it described in the letter, that it was a bar tavern or bar tavern accessory to?
pull up the letter here.
But Rick, what you're saying is that they would have a problem with it too if it was just a total bar, casino.
Yeah,
Well,
but it seems like this board kind of keeps a pretty good eye on things, so that's,
with that being the case, though, I need to look at.
That church thing does not apply in the C1, but does it apply in the C3 zone? And if that's the case, then you can't even do it, right?
That is true. Yes.
If it's within 300 feet of a church or a school?
Yes. Yep. And I will look that up here. I'm going to look up. Now I lost my train of thought on what I'm looking up.
If that's the case, then this is not an issue, and
Yes.
we can dispense with it real easy.
We had
This is Donna
historically
Marchand.
had a bar across the street at one point, but I think that predated the Bridge Church occupying that building.
So this, the adjacent landowner letter was just sent out, not referencing that it was in conjunction with a boutique. It was just for a bar tavern.
And so we never heard anything from the church.
No.
But even if they don't care or they didn't respond, what does the ordinance say about proximity in the C3?
It's from door to door, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. I think it's.
Can I ask a question? How does that relate to Studio 212 then being in the same proximity?
I believe it's 300 feet. If I can find it, I don't administer Title II. So, okay,
Now the
so,
300 feet's going to put it really close.
yeah, 100 yards measured by the regular and usual path of travel from door or exit of any church, school.
So what's the distance between Studio 212's front door and Lindner's building?
Oh, that's gonna be,
It's gonna be more than 300 feet.
So that's a lot, yep.
well, yeah, but why, shouldn't we be looking at the church?
Well, her question was about the applicant's question was about Studio 212, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that we were
So that's
way over 300 feet.
650. Let me look at one more thing here. Okay. Yeah, so I guess I was not aware that that was a church. And I don't know how we keep a pulse on that. I mean, Bridges Church was not on my radar.
Mr. Chair, I think the appropriate action would be to close the public hearing and then make a finding that we don't have the ability to act on this request because it's inconsistent with the ordinance.
Well, if we go the regular path of travel, I mean, I don't know how far we want to stretch that. 364 feet that way.
I didn't bring that up to create a problem either, because we have talked to them, and if it was for the use that she's talking about it, they were okay with it, as we are.
I don't think there's latitude in our ordinance regarding that for exception to that process, even consistency with conditional use. Is that right?
Yeah, the thing about it though, this is where it gets messy because this is Title II and this is what the license is tied to. And then we would be looking at it from the
However, is there language in the ordinance that says that the most restrictive language applies throughout the code, anywhere else in code? That's usually common language that you would find in the zoning regulations. So if there's other rules or regulations more restrictive than the zoning, then you'd have to adhere to those rules.
Yes. So if the premise are within 100 yards measured by the regular and usual path of travel from a door or exit of any church.
And as you were drawing those lines
Oh, sorry. In a C1 or C3.
It doesn't apply?
Does not apply.
Okay. All right, then.
Oh, boy.
learning opportunity. All right. Okay.
Wow, okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant from the board members? Also, I'll ask, is there any other members in the audience here or online that wish to speak in favor or against this item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing, and I will ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
Mr. Chair, to be consistent with the last application that came before us that failed, I will be consistent in the motion, in making the motion to approve the location for a bar tavern, not as an accessory use to the boutique. And that the presence of a sign at least 5 days prior to the public hearing was, the intent was made by the applicant.
So we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion from the board members?
Yes, I would like to. And, you know, just like the last time, I like to listen to what the neighbors are saying. And the church that's right next door and the business that's right in the area. Obviously, she did the right thing and went around and talked to everybody, so everybody knew what she was planning to do, I'm assuming. And if we could put that, like what Brandy was saying, that it is just with the boutique, and if she doesn't have a boutique anymore, then it goes away.
So that would be a substitute motion?
Well, I'm just talking that right now. I don't know yet. You know, what does anybody else feel about that?
This is Ford.
Go ahead, Diana.
And I don't know, how do you determine then, what are the parameters when you no longer have a boutique?
Yeah.
That's a really huge gray area.
And I kind of
You-
agree with you there.
If you,
Sorry, I didn't mean
Go
to interrupt. Go ahead. Okay. I was just gonna say, I agree with you, and that, I don't know if we really want to get into trying to police percentages or anything like that.
right.
So, sorry for interrupting you, Diana.
What I would be interested in, and we had discussed it just momentarily, do we want to put a time frame that, you know, we threw out 10 p.m. No wine would be sold or served after 10 p.m. Do you want to do something like that?
And nothing on Sundays.
I don't know. Why are we micromanaging this business?
Right.
I really don't. I mean, one, we don't have the wherewithal to find out whether there's a sign that's up for 5 days in front of a business. How are we going to manage? Are they selling 2 purses and a shirt and seven beers? And which is more important and which one is covering more of the business? We're not going to be enforcing it. So why are we adding conditions that aren't going to be in place when the ordinance specifically says it doesn't matter about churches or schools or residences or any of those things in the C3 zone? The city council has basically said they're fine with issuing a beer and wine license. You let the business go through like every other casino and bar and tavern that's along the Highway 212 strip. If it succeeds, it succeeds. If it fails, it fails. If they have problems, the city council can pull their liquor license or beer license a year from now.
Yeah, and I was just gonna mention the year from now thing. I do think we need to kind of trust what the applicant is saying. I mean, but we don't have the staff to fully watch it. If they say they'll be done by 6 p.m. most of the time with a few events, you know, occasionally going a little later, I feel like I would like to trust them. And, you know, if there is problems a year from now, it'll be at city council again and they'll have their opportunity.
And that's when the neighboring homeowners or neighboring owners can come and talk too.
Chair, can I make a comment again? There is, I believe at least 2, and I believe there's salons that have the same type of license. I don't know what zoning, but there's never been any restrictions to them as far as hours they can operate or anything like that.
I think that's true. This is Ford again. And the woman who spoke, I just wanted us to discuss that because that had been one of her requests, or the notice that Brandy got from one of the neighbors. How late would they go at night? And I just thought it would be appropriate if we discussed that as a board, and we didn't forget to discuss that particular neighbor's concern. So I have one other thing. If we're going to see this, and I agree, I don't think it's accessory. I mean, they're asking for a bar tavern conditional use, and that's, you know, what the ordinance talks about. The parking situation, do they have enough parking spots for the bar tavern conditional use, Brandy?
Based on the square footage, like you would do a normal bar tavern?
Yep, I have that included in the staff report. So the applicant will occupy approximately 33,240 square feet, and that was just from my measurements. Just to get an idea, so the existing off-street parking allows for approximately 30 stalls. And so for a bar tavern, you have to have one space per 150 square feet. So it would be required to have 22 spaces based on the square footage. And then if the primary, and then the boutique or retail establishment requires 1 per 300 square feet, which would be 11 spaces. Obviously, that's going to overlap because part of the business is used as bar, tavern, some, and then the other part is used as retail establishment. So it is met. And then the
So
other business, the other suite within that structure is also that's not accounting for their business, which I
So there's
did not explore.
There's 30 parking spaces. There's 30 parking spaces, and the bar tavern takes up 22. How many spaces does Lindner Music need
Yes.
for their square footage?
And we break that up as, like, I'm sure they have warehouse area.
There's never more than, I know, than 4 cars ever at Linder's Music, speaking to
Well,
a person
and-
who's there quite a lot.
And
Yeah,
they
but
are
what
the
would happen
owners.
if Rod and Sally then sold to another retail store? So then you still have to, for each suite, allow for the certain amount of parking, no matter what, because we don't police
Right,
what
but-
business is going on.
But if it's probably half warehouses, half showroom, and then I think
Yeah.
there's 1 or 2 instrument teaching rooms in that facility.
Yes, I think in this situation, I mean, it's definitely something that we want to look at going forward. We do not control any use permits, though. So when a business changes, we do not know what it is. We're looking at it up front with their building a commercial building and saying that they need this much parking. But if it were to change, then we don't have that opportunity. When we get a conditional use request, though, we can look at it to make sure that what is existing is sufficient. And so today they have the 30 stalls, which does meet what what the structure is doing.
But
And that includes this one being a bar tavern with 22 spaces?
Yes. If it was if the whole square footage was a bar tavern, which,
But we're issuing a bar tavern license. We've already decided we're not doing the accessory thing. It's a bar tavern. So it needs 22 spaces. And Lindner Music is retail. How many spaces does retail need?
1 per 300 square feet.
And so how many does Lindner Music need then?
They don't need anything in this relationship because they're already there and they're not asking for a permit.
However, we have to deduct the spaces that Lindner Music is going to need from the 30 spaces that are available to see if there are 22 left.
I did not do that calculation.
What's the dimensions of the building? The whole building? Because it's a half-seas as far as the spacing.
Yeah, and so then that's where the calculation came from. So it's 6,540.
For the whole building?
Yes.
And so half of that
Yep.
is 10 spaces for Lindner's.
Yes, 11 spaces. And that's, well, I do have that because I took it in half. So I have that on the staff report that there would be 11 spaces then for
Lindner's.
the retail establishment for Lindner Music. But what I'm saying too is where we look at it, it can be broken down. So if some of it is a warehouse and it's not retail space, which I did not look into that, unfortunately, that would reduce the amount of parking. The only thing about this application though is that the owner also owns that suite. So I would hope that they would make sure that there was still going to be sufficient parking for their business.
So be that as it may, whether that would happen or not, we can only guess at that. But we can look at the numbers specifically. So if you say that part of Lindner Music is warehouse and would not be included in the parking space requirement, then with 22 for the bar tavern and the 8 left for Lindner Music, all the parking seems to be covered properly according to the ordinance.
Yes. Well,
Okay,
and
that's what I
but it
wanted
would
to know.
require 11 spaces, so technically they would be 2 off, or
However, I can attest that more than 35% of that Linder building is warehouse space in the back.
okay.
Right.
I was going, if I could
So then-
finish, please. So we would be 3 spaces off, but there is the latitude in the ordinance that allows for a 20% reduction, so they would be meeting the intent of the ordinance regardless.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's a really good question, comment, good discussion, really good discussion.
Really good.
Is there any other, items from the board? Sounded like there was 2 thoughts of alternate motions, but I don't think we're gonna, I know an alternate motion was not made. It doesn't sound like one is going to be made. And then hearing no other comments, I guess I will ask for a roll call vote.
Okay. Spire,
Yes.
Aletsky,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Kays,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Yeah, really good discussion. Yeah.
But Mr. Schultz, remember, if it gets a little wild and crazy, you know, those women, you know, you guys can say something.
Well, I don't picture like the bikers coming through, going to the rally, stopping and buying a purse or something on their way and spending time there.
No, but I mean, like if it does become
Yeah.
all bar, then
That's all.
you can come and say, hey,
Perfect.
okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right, 5th item on the agenda is open public comment. Do we receive any, Brandy?
Nope.
All right, 6 is new business. Do you have any, or does anyone on the board have any new business?
I sent an email out today about possibly moving the July 21st Plan Commission meeting to Wednesday, July 20th. At the same time, 4:15, there's just a conflict with schedule. I've heard back from a few of you. If you can please email me your availability, I will keep tabs on that to, and then send out further correspondence to let you guys know if that's doable or not, if I can make a quorum or not.
Thank you.
You got my email.
Yep.
And then a reminder, because
Yes.
you've been kind of stuck on
Yes,
Thursdays.
yes, definitely. And I appreciate the flexibility if we are able to make that adjustment, so.
No, that's a good reminder. Any other new business?
Nope.
Okay. Moving on to item 7, any old business?
Nope.
Well, I think we need to ask that the posted sign ordinance be addressed in some manner. And if it's ambiguous, uncertain, difficult to follow, difficult to enforce, we either need to fix it or get rid of it.
I agree.
Yeah. I think we could, a board or a plan commission issue, but I do think we should add that, yeah, I agree, we should add that to our list of ordinances to look at.
I know where I'm at on it.
All right,
I agree that we should look at it, and I would be inclined for just staff workload. If it's the intent of it was never to create more of a staff administration issue. It was strictly to try to make it more transparent, but we don't have the staff to really be policing that, to make sure that's posted for 5 continuous days before the meeting. So that would be my thoughts initially, that,
Yeah, I think it'd be appropriate to bring it as a discussion to an upcoming plan commission meeting.
any other old business? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Uh,
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.